Hey leader, if there's one thing I know about leaders, it's that they want to continually make their organizations better and better. So every pastor I know wants his church to be stronger, deeper, more reaching, more life transformational next year than it was this year. Well, how do you do that? One thing I do each year is to take a look at the organization I am leading. And I ask myself, how can I make this organization better? So that's a great question, but it's very broad. That could go almost anywhere. So I boil that down to using Jesus's organizational strategy and the 5 key components that he has there. And I try to look at each one of those components and see how I can make that better over the next year in the organization I lead. So if we take a look at Jesus, particularly Matthew chapter 16, where the word church is used for the first time in the New Testament, first time in the Gospels, it's used by Jesus. And it's used in that chapter where he lays out his organizational strategy. So the first thing that he does there with his 12 leaders is to clarify the mission of the organization. So for your church, a question you can ask yourself, and this is a bettering question, is the mission of our church clear? Why do we exist? So most churches will say, well, we're here to make disciples. Well, true, right? Matthew 28 tells us to make disciples. So how many disciples did your organization make last year? Most people don't know. What exactly is a disciple? What are the 5 key components of it? Most people don't know. So it's good to have clarity on what it is that you're actually saying. So the make disciples is something that's in the Bible we can use, but what is it? What makes it particular to your organization? For example, the church where I am right now decided through the leadership strategy of Jesus process about 4 years ago that they would be a multicultural church. And they have done that by intentionally inviting in people from other cultures and intentionally not diffusing that by starting churches, what I call language churches, on their own, but they're bringing it all together. And today, their attendance is up better than it's been in 20 years. They have people from 10 different countries all worshiping here together. They have translations for different parts of it. It's more of an urban area here in Columbus, Ohio, our country's 14th largest city. But that came through the clarity that they got as a leadership team on what it was that their church was supposed to be doing. So when I talk to churches and ask the question, well, who is your church here to reach? What do you think every church says? Well, we're here to reach everybody. But the truth is you really don't. They'll say, well, yes, we do. So I'll say, so do you have any first generation Kenyan immigrants in your church? Oh, no. Okay, well, we're not reaching everybody. So even that one question limits the focus. So the more you understand who it is that you're reaching, the better you can target the things that you do. For example, if your church is trying to reach families, right? Say young couples who are married or anticipating marriage, maybe even with kids, you will do different activities than you will do if your church is there to reach senior adults. So churches will tell me, well, we're here to reach families, but then they have a senior adult outing, they have a senior adult luncheon, they have a senior adult get-together, where the focus is on senior adults. Well, if your focus is on senior adults, that's really who you're trying to reach, right? So as a church, just to get aligned, to get focused on the area and the people that you're trying to reach through your mission and your vision. So whereas mission answers the question, why do you exist? Vision answers the question, what does the mission look like in 10 years when we do it well? For the church trying to reach multiple cultures, it would mean we would have people from a lot of different countries in this one church. They would have their kids here. We would have programs that are in different languages reaching out into the community. If your church is one to reach senior adults, then you'll have a lot of senior adult functions. It works both ways. So your vision says we need to do things for senior adults. But even if your vision isn't clear, but most of what you do is for senior adults, then it'll be a senior adult church. And if you want to change that, then you change your words, but you also change the activities that you actually do. So how can your organization get better over the next year? To clarify why you exist, what that will look like in 10 years, all the way down to who is your primary prospect. All of us want to reach the world, but we also know that most of our churches are in some kind of community within maybe a 5-mile radius, could be a 30-mile radius, but there are people within that we're trying to reach. There are things that would reach them that wouldn't reach other people. If I'm trying to reach people of other languages, I'm probably going to have a way for them to understand English. Whereas if I'm in an area where everybody speaks English, that is totally unnecessary. So it really does guide a lot of your leadership decisions. So you don't do something based on what a church in some other state does that's effective. You do it through what God wants in your particular location, through your particular people in your particular community. So to be clear on your purpose, which is your mission, your vision, your values, you can get better as an organization just by clarifying those three things. But then you also need to have a plan. A plan means you have a group of people, your leaders, usually no more than 12, who understand what the strategy is, right? They understand the mission, vision, and values. Then they develop an accountable plan for that, to where you give assignments for things to do that will help achieve that particular mission. So for example, if you wanted to have a class where you're teaching English, so in that leadership group, you would have, we start a class that teaches English to, say, Nepali-speaking people. And then you would assign that to one particular leader in that group, and then you give a deadline to that assignment for that to be completed with that particular group. And then you meet, if it's all lay leaders, you meet at least monthly with all those lay leaders in person to see how you're doing based on that plan. That's having a plan in place. That is much, much more effective than just saying we have a vision for reaching many cultures, but we really don't have a clear way to put that into practice. So that plan, I found working with hundreds of churches now, most churches don't have that. They don't have anything written down that their leaders are accountable to with a deadline that says when that thing needs to be finished, with a drop dead date on that. That piece will greatly enhance your organization, will greatly increase your church's effectiveness, which means life change in the lives of other people. So you have the purpose. That's one way when you're looking at bettering your organization. How can we clarify the mission, vision, values? Or how can we clarify the plan? And then the third key component of that is the work, the things that are actually getting done. So once you have the plan, there are components of that plan that need to happen. So you need to ride herd on those components to see that those things are carried out. Now you don't have to monitor all the way down into the details, but you monitor it by the work is happening as a result of that plan. So when they come back once a month with a plan, oh, that isn't finished yet, you can dig down to why that's not finished. And typically it's in the work area where the work isn't being done. Either it didn't get delegated, or the person to whom it was delegated didn't know it was delegated to them, or they did not have an accountable plan for them. So bettering the detailed part of that will make the whole organization better. Effectiveness comes from the details. A fella in Houston, Texas, who worked with a major developer for a lot of those downtown skyscrapers, told me that you can get to 95 out of 100% with effort, but it takes almost as much effort to get from 95% to 100% as it does to get from 80% to 95%. So it takes more effort, it takes more deliberation, it takes more scrutiny, honestly, to get down to those details, but that's what makes you excellent. So once you have the purpose, right, mission, vision, values, you have the plan, it's accountable, people know what it is, there's a deadline. Then you have the work that's assigned and tracked. You also have a format. So your format is your structure. So it happens in a couple different ways. One of those is through people. What is your people structure? Typically the pastor at the top, then you have your key leaders as the next tier down, then you have volunteers under them. So making that the best that it can be. When you change something in that organizational structure with your key leaders, it changes the organization. Now this can get a little touchy because you see a person who you know is in the wrong spot. They're not a good fit for it. People don't want to work with them. That area is not doing well. When you hear about conflicts in the church, most of them are coming from that one particular area. For your church to get better, you have to deal with that issue. And sometimes it's moving the person out of the position. Honestly, it's most times moving the person out of the position. Sometimes you can coach them up a little bit, although that's very rare. So it's the organizational structure of your leaders, but it's also the organizational structure of the systems within the church. For example, somebody visits your church. So how do you know that they visited? What's the contact that your church has with them? How do you get them funneled to a small group Bible study, or maybe you have Sunday school? What is the process of growth for that particular person? Another key aspect of that format. So purpose, clarifying your mission, vision, values will make you more effective as an organization a year from now than you are right now. Having a plan where people are held accountable You have a monthly meeting, a monthly check-in that has a deadline, and there are things that have to be done, will make you more effective as an organization. Getting into the work, the details, monitoring down to that level will help you be more effective as an organization. Making better the format, your organizational structure with your leaders, but also the systems makes you better. And then the fifth key component is down where that's called the improvement cycle. This circle goes around all four of the others. That there's a regular system for evaluating how you're doing as a church. So I tell church leaders, if most of your leaders are volunteer, you need to meet at least once a month. What are we going to do in the meeting? Well, you're going to check in on the plan, right, to see how the plan's going. So that regular evaluation is key. The thing that's mystified me more, probably than any other thing in talking with leaders, when I ask a pastor, how often does your leadership team meet? And they'll kind of squint their face and say, well, I think a year ago we had a meeting. There's no way that's going to go well. And even if it's going okay, it can go a lot better when you have that regular rhythm of an improvement cycle. So when I was in local church ministry and somebody agrees to be a leader, a teacher or a leader over an area, part of the agreement is that they attend those monthly meetings. You can't miss that. Attending that is as important as attending the Sunday school class or the small group that you lead. It's part of the job. It's not an afterthought. It's not a one-off. So leader, I know you want your organization to improve. By looking at each of these 5 areas, you can zero in on specific steps you can take to make your church more effective with more life change and life transformation a year from now than what you're seeing today. Still not subscribed? Just hit the button there to get more leader insights and develop yourself in a way that God can use you to an even higher degree.